I'm really excited about this, Danny, because I've known you for like a decade and it's taken that long to get you on this show.
I'm sorry.
See, there he is.
Steve Ronnie.
I told you that
Gang.
Baroni was going to be on. That was going to happen.
Get out of there, Ferroni. Well, I'm very glad to be on your show, Vicki, and I'm very happy. Just a pleasure to be here and pleasure to talk to you.
You know, you've turned into this lovely guy, and we were talking about this before we came live, because there really is a difference in you, Danny. You know, when I definitely first met you through Postel, and you were so lovely. You did my book launch, and by the way, you never cashed the check. I still owe you that money. I don't remember how much it was, but you never cashed the check. But you were wonderful. But you were always with me, very serious. But there's been this change in you. And we were talking before we went on the air, like what kind of caused that change in you? What do you think it is?
Well, I'm not sure that there has been that much of a change in me. I've always had kind of a dour expression, a serious expression on my face, which is just the way I am. It's not like I'm thinking heavy thoughts. It just looks like I am.
Yeah.
It's the New York Jew in me, perhaps, that creates that situation. But there's no question that when I fell in love with Lisa Roy, my life changed. And for the time I got to spend with her, that definitely changed me and gave me a different perspective. So, yeah.
So would you say that's like happiness talking?
Well, certainly, yes. Okay, yes.
So how did you guys meet?
Lisa and I?
Mm-hmm.
We met at the NAMM show, amazingly, which I always resisted going to.
Wow.
In this particular one, the section was being honored. If you remember the section, right?
Oh, hell yes, I do.
Okay, so we were being given an award.
Speaking of which, Lee is on right now, by the way, saying hello.
Of course he is. He's never off the computer, you know. He's Mr.
So you guys were getting an award.
Yes, we're getting an award. And as I walked in, she was there behind the velvet rope letting people in. And she said, "Hi, Danny, do you remember me?" Because she ran a studio called Ground Control back in the day. And I worked there briefly with an artist, did some production with an artist. And amazingly, I don't remember her, and I didn't remember her. That's
wow.
Not me at all. If there's a beautiful woman in the room, I definitely remember her. You know, it's true that I was married and recently a father, but that wouldn't stop me from looking. You know, so. I really didn't notice her, which is really strange. Because anyway, so as I walk in through the velvet rope, she said, "Hi, Danny. You know, it's Lisa. You might remember me." And I took a few steps and I said, "Wait a minute." I turned around and looked at her and I said, "This is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." And so later, 15 or 20 minutes later, I asked her for her number. She reluctantly gave it to me, and then we went out on a date, and nature took its course from there. We were immediately, for me, it was love at first sight, really.
I was going to ask, was it on from the first?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, definitely. Also, Lisa knew everybody. She knew everybody I knew. She knew all the musicians, all of whom loved her, plus everyone that ran the studios, and just everyone. So it was a really good fit.
And this is before you was this before you guys became the immediate family, before you started the band?
No. We had already started the band.
Because she started working for you. She worked for you guys, yes?
Listen, what she did for us was astonishing. And this is somebody very highly paid and very highly thought of. I mean, there's no way in the world we could have afforded her monthly rate that she charged everybody else. But she loved the band. I guess she loved me, and she did a tremendous amount of work for us.
And as I was saying to you, she was fantastic to deal with. I booked you guys through her a couple of times, and she was so easy and so wonderful and so warm. And it's definitely created a change. I've seen a change in you since you connected with her. Absolutely. I mean, there's this warm and fuzzy side to you that's it's fuzzy amazing. There's fuzzy you. Mm-hmm. So, all right, Danny. So I did not know. I know that you were from New York. I didn't know from where. You just told me it was Lenox Hill. You were born in Manhattan, but raised in Westchester. So what was it like? Were you privileged? Were you middle class? What was your background?
I was raised middle class. Um, Although, yeah, it was middle class, and the block I lived on was middle class people and families and houses. So yes.
And so did you know immediately music was your thing? Did you pick up a guitar? When did that happen for you?
Well, I had started to listen. I loved rock and roll as soon as I heard it. The first time I heard Tutti Frutti by Little Richard, it was all over. It was over. And the fact that my mother hated it also helped.
That was my next question. What music were your parents listening to?
Well, they were listening to show tunes, show music, and some very dour European music. My father would put on. It scared the shit out of me. It was like horror music, the soundtracks to horror movies.
Where was your father? What's your ancestry? Where were your people from?
My father's family was from Ukraine. My mother was born in Moscow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So rock and roll was not their bag. No.
Looked down on, yeah.
And so as soon as you heard it, you knew this is what you want to do, or no?
As soon as I heard, I knew I loved it. And then I started listening to, I don't know, maybe one of my brother's college friends brought home a couple of albums by John Lee Hooker and Muddy Waters. When I put those on, that's all she wrote. I listened to that and it changed my life for sure.
And how did you find your way to guitar? Did you know guitar, or did you play
guitar, I really didn't know about the guitar, but my mother thought I looked cute with the guitar. So she bought me a Stella guitar, cheap Stella guitar, made me take lessons, which I loathed. And then I'd be playing my scale. Dun, 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 dun. But after a while, see, nothing's fun unless you get better at it, unless you get good at it, So after a while, I learned the 3 chords with which you could play every Buddy Holly song, every Elvis song, everything that was on the radio. And that's when the heavens parted. And that's when I said, oh, I can see how I can be a part of this, And that's when I knew I had to play the guitar and I had to be a musician, no question.
Did you have like a gift from the You must have. It must have come naturally to you from the beginning, I'm guessing.
I don't know. I can't say that for sure. Some of it does.
Did you play? Were you one of those guys that like took the guitar to bed? Were you playing round the clock? Were you incessantly playing?
Once I started loving it, yes, I played all the time. Mm-hmm.
And when did you first start playing with others? When did you have your first band?
16 or 17, I had a high school band, which I unfortunately do not remember. As soon as I graduated high school, I started a band, and that band played all over in Manhattan, all the clubs there, the discos, the dance, what were called discos at the time.
Right.
Dance clubs, And there was a million of them there's a lot of them in Manhattan, and we played all of them.
Did you know Jerry Brandt?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I worked for Jerry when it was Spodiotes, but later, yeah. But
Right.
Jerry had one of the first discos.
Yes, he did.
So you're playing the clubs in New York. You're a kid. Do you not go to college? Do you go to college? What's that?
That was college.
That was college.
Playing those bars, all those bars. We played every kind of bar you could imagine. Like I said, the upscale stuff in Manhattan, but we also played alcoholic bars where they'd charge 50 cents for a beer when the band was playing and 25 cents for a beer when the band wasn't playing. We played strip joints. We played gay bars. We played college college scenes, all of it, up and down the coast, up and down the East Coast.
And how is this going over at home? How are your parents feeling about this?
Well, my father undoubtedly was sure that he was going to be supporting me the rest of his life. And he was positive about it, and he was not supportive at all. He was afraid for me, afraid that I'd fail, and afraid that he would be supporting me forever and ever,
Well, it didn't take long for you to have success, which we're going to get to in a minute. But since we're talking about your dad, how did he appreciate your success from the get-go?
Good question. I'm not sure because he never mentioned it or told me.
Oh, he was like my mother. Okay. We all have one of those, us Jews.
Well, you're right. But the thing is, he grew up in a very different environment and a different culture than I did. Mm-hmm. All right. In the 60s, everybody stuck their tongue down everybody's throat. And it was, I love you so much. That wasn't the case in my father's generation.
Right.
You didn't wrap your arms around everybody as soon as you saw them. You didn't tell your kids they were the greatest things that ever happened. It wasn't like that. His father didn't treat him like that, and he didn't treat me like that. You know, and maybe that's what gave me enough push to go out and do some of the shit I had to do to get over it. And what I mean by that is stand in line to talk to the club owner and be rejected and told to fuck off and all that. And I was a shy kid, but I managed to do that because I wanted my band to play these gigs so much that I was ready to take shit from club owners, managers, whatever.
And it wasn't that different than talking to your father, I guess.
Well, no, they were less scary than my father.
So your father never, with all the success did he live to see you have all the success?
Yes, he did.
And he never gave it up for your success?
Never.
Never.
Right.
Did he come to see you do some of this stuff? Mm-hmm. Did he ever come to see you do it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he met James, he met Jackson, he met these people, and
yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
And how about your mom?
My mother was more supportive. My mother was more artistic. She was a novelist and a writer, and she was very, very. She was a brilliant woman who knew a lot about a lot of different stuff, and she was definitely more supportive. But she was walking the line between me and my father, so there was all that difficulty. How much do I owe you for this psychiatry lesson, by the way? You know, I'm not even on a couch.
I'm just, I have Jewish parents. I had Jewish parents, so I'm just curious about all this stuff because,
sure.
Yeah, my mother never gave it. Yeah, right. My mother basically told me I was going to be homeless on the street.
Young people wouldn't understand that now, but that generation, that what they call the greatest generation, the wartime generation, a lot of immigrants came over. Both my parents were immigrants.
Oh, your parents, okay.
Mm-hmm. And those people didn't treat their children like the little porcelain dolls that future parents did, you know. Hey, buddy, hey, could you think you could step into the car, you know? There wasn't none of that, all right? Get in the car.
So wait, you're a dad?
Yes, I'm a dad.
So what kind of dad are you?
Get in the car.
No, you're not a dad like your dad was a dad.
No, I love my daughters very, very much, and they know I love them, and I encourage them in everything. But I don't spoil them. I don't tell them they're the greatest thing that ever lived, and I tell them. I said, you get arrested for DUI, something like that, you're going to stay in jail. Don't expect me to rush down and bail you out, because I won't. I won't. You dig? You know, so that's the way I talk to my kids. But
if they do something creative, wonderful, you're going to tell them that that it's wonderful.
Yes, yes? I always do. Yes, I always did. But I didn't butter it up too much. You see, because life ain't like that. Life doesn't think you're the greatest thing that ever happened in the whole universe. You know, so that's why. Although they knew I did think that, they also knew I knew that the world didn't think that. You know, and I tried to impart that to them.
Are they creative?
Yes. Right. Mm-hmm.
Are they in the arts?
One of them is. One of them is a social worker, and one of them is a songwriter and a podcast producer. And
fantastic.
Right, and they're both very bright, very sharp, and very loving, and incredible people. Yeah. I'm very proud.
That's a wonderful thing. Okay, so back to you. So you play the clubs in New York. You're doing the discos. You're doing all of this stuff. You summer in Martha's Vineyard. So now at that time, as I recall, Martha's Vineyard wasn't the Tony. Well, yeah, it was kind of. The Kennedys were always there, weren't they?
No, they weren't always there.
They weren't always there?
You know, when I tell people that my family went to Martha's Vineyard every summer, they think, oh, you know, what is he, a Rockefeller? I guess your parents were zillionaires. No, my parents went there because it was cheap.
Really?
1950, Martha's Vineyard was cheap. You could rent a house for the whole summer for $700. You know? You dig? $700 won't buy you a parking space. Now, but then it was a very open, very middle class kind of vibe. Nobody, even people that were wealthy or rich, dressed indifferently, drove crappy cars. No one ever would dream of leading with their wealth or running their wealth in front of you. It's a very different place than it is now.
And so how old were you when you started going there for the
I
summers?
was like 5.
Like 5. Okay. And so what would your summers look? Did you go to camp? What did summer look like for you?
Well, we just hit the beach, a lot of the time. Once I got, not when I was 5, but when I got to be 7, 8, and 9 years old, you hitchhike everywhere with your pals. Didn't think
Oh,
anything
yeah.
out of it. Bye, Mom, bye, Dad. You go, and you're going all day. Or maybe all night, too, because you go sleep over at somebody's house. So
Oh, the
it's
days
a
were
very,
different then.
very laissez-faire, very open situation, not like it is now, not where everyone's terrified to let their kids out the door.
I mean,
Also,
if
there were no
my
cell
kids,
phones. There's none of that. Right?
if my kids tried to do anything like what I was doing,
Mhm.
I always knew where my kids were. My mother never knew where I was. That's
Right.
just kind of the way that was. So, okay. So how old were you and how did you meet James on Martha's Vineyard? How did that
Okay, I
happen?
think I was about 13 or 14.
Mhm.
And as usual, me and some cat, we were lollygagging on the front porch of the Menemsha store down there.
The
And
what store?
the Menemsha store was a grocery store slash post office in the fishing village of Menemsha.
Menemsha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so he was hanging around, I was hanging around. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? And then we started bantering back and forth. Then I'll tell you a story. He says, let's go steal something. And I go,
I love it.
Jamie, that's what we all call him then. And I still call him Jamie. Yeah, let's go around to the little antique store around the corner. So, okay. One of us was going to, be the diversion.
Yeah.
We just snatch something. So I can't remember which one. I was the diversion.
Yeah.
And James snatched a little figurine or something like that. He's like, we're 13 or 14 at this time. And he walks out. Sure enough, the woman recognized him, realized something was going on, called James's parents, and James's parents were, you did not want to have to face them at all. James's dad was really intimidating and had a big presence. He looked like a bald eagle, and he had a voice like this. Scared the shit out of you. So they decided that they didn't want me hanging around with Kootch, that drugstore cowboy.
They blamed you.
Right. James, he told them it was all my idea. He ratted me out there. I'll never forgive him for that. Really.
So speaking of Kootch, when did you get that name? How did that happen?
I got that in summer camp around the same period of time, 13, 14, around there. One summer, my parents sent me to camp instead of letting me go to the Vineyard, and they couldn't pronounce Kortchmar, so it came out Kootchmar, and then it was Kootch.
Nice. All right. So when you and James first connected, were you both already playing music?
Oh, kind of, sort of, yeah. Yeah, I knew a little bit more than he did on guitar, a little bit more. But he was a fantastic singer, and that was one of the first things I realized. We were hitchhiking somewhere, and he just started to sing. And a Ray Charles song or something. I went, wow, you can sing. You can really actually sing, because I knew what good singing was. I'd listened to Ray Charles and Otis Redding. I loved that stuff. So did he. And so I knew what good singing was. And I knew immediately that he had it. Bang! Just like that. And then
Did he know he had it?
Oh, I don't know. You'd have to ask him that. I don't know.
Okay.
I knew he did, And I knew he had the potential to be a huge star. But I also knew that having the potential to be a star and being one are very different. Even then, even when I was a kid, I knew that there was a big difference between being really talented and making it and becoming huge.
Were any of the musicians that you were playing with around New York, did anybody break through before you did?
No.
You broke through so young.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I was really ambitious, and I really wanted to make it, and I really wanted to play, and I wasn't distracted. Everybody was on dope back then. You got to realize, everybody was high.
And you weren't?
No, I wasn't. I was a nice little Jewish boy from the suburb. I was terrified of that stuff.
Really?
It was either speed or heroin, and everyone was doing it.
Well, including James, though.
James, The drummer in our band was doing it. The bass player in our band, who eventually had to go home. The band before that, the King Bees, our great organ player and lead singer, ended up doing heroin. This is what's happening in the village. Everybody was doing dope, not just smoking reefer. I didn't smoke reefer until I was 23, 24 years old. Excuse me.
Go ahead. Okay, so how does the friendship and stealing stuff from the Haba, whatever it's called, store turn into playing together? I mean, okay, so you hear he has a great voice.
We had a lot in common, and we were good buddies, and we laughed. We both have been grown up in similar circumstances. That is to say, his parents were intellectuals. My parents were kind of intellectuals too, and my parents used to take me to all the Broadway shows, once or twice a year.
What was your first Broadway show? Do you remember?
Let me see, the cowboy one, Oklahoma. So I saw the original Oklahoma, the original Carousel, the original My Fair Lady, all that stuff. Because my mother.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I couldn't believe it. Watching people on stage, I was like, what the fuck? I had never experienced anything like that before. So I dug it. It didn't make me want to be a Broadway person, but I dug the performance aspect of it, And James was the same thing. James's mother used to take him and one of his siblings up to New York a couple of times a year from North Carolina, and they would go to see all the shows. So he saw the same shows I did. Like that kind of thing.
Did you, when you first started, Danny? You were ambitious? Did you want to be front and center when you started?
No, I never wanted to be the guy. I wanted to be in a band. Like the Beatles and the Stones.
You never wanted to be the guy. And when did you start writing?
When I was 16.
And right away, was it quality?
No, it stunk. It's terrible. I didn't write a good song for years.
Well, okay, so you and James had a lot in common. And so how do you guys start to play together?
Well, we started jamming on blues mainly because we both were big Lightning Hopkins fans, and we loved the blues. And there was a folk bang at the time, a folk bang, a folk movement. In a way, it was a bang. And while I never got into serious folk music, I definitely got into the concept of folk blues. What was that called? Folk blues, which was actually blues. Anyway, it was marketed as folk blues, and I was really into it. So was James. And we listened to a lot of Lightning Hopkins, listened to a lot of Ray Charles, and various other people from that era.
And so so did you start to just fool around together? Did you immediately put a band together and start going out there? What happened?
Fooling around in friends of ours' living rooms and stuff, And really, it was nothing serious about it. But then we decided we would go get a job at the local coffee house. And we did, And the coffee house was the Unicorn Coffee House on Martha's Vineyard. Mm-hmm. And there are still posters. I still have a poster. It says Jamie and Kootch.
Wow.
To be honest with you, I'd rather be Kootch than Kootch.
So, and so what year is that?
Let me see, 64?
Wow, that's really early.
Yeah.
So then what happens? You don't play together all for the next 6 years, right? You're doing other things.
He went back home, and then he ended up in McLean's hospital. And I started a band, kind of a rhythm and blues band. And that's the band I told you about that played up and down the coast and all the New York discos at the time. And we did that. We were like playing the same kind of stuff as the Rascals, but nowhere near as good. And everywhere we went, people would say to us, "Oh, you should have been here the last week the Rascals were here." They were better than us, way better than us. So.
And then you started playing with Carole before.
Okay, I met Carole. The second band we had was the Flying Machine. That's the band James and I put together. And we were playing at the Night Owl Cafe downtown. And I'm sure you've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we held that gig for a long time as the Flying Machine. One of the other bands there was the Middle Class, who were very good. Middle Class were really good. And they had been signed to Carole and Jerry Goffin's. They'd put a label together. They created a label for these guys. So they played there, and they were really good. And I got to be friends with them. And I was, at that point, my pal Charlie Larkey, I think, who was the bass player, introduced me to Carole. He brought Carole down to see us. And Carole sitting in a booth, and I was shaking in my shoes because I knew all about Goffin and King and how badass they were. And that was what I was aspiring to. They wrote up.
At this point, you're writing.
Yeah, oh, sure. But no, they wrote Up on the Roof. I
Yes,
said, if I
they
could write a
did.
song a fifth as good as that, I would be in heaven. So I went over to her shaking in my shoes, but she was so sweet and accepting and terrific. And I talked to her for a while. And then I said, James, come over here. I dragged him over to introduce him to Carole. He was even more nervous than me. He was like, and then ran away, you know. And so that was how they met originally.
Wow.
Mhm.
And so then how did it come together for Sweet Baby James, for that whole thing to happen with you guys?
Well, that's when Peter Asher enters the picture. And my first band, the King Bees, actually had done a very short tour, New England tour, backing up Peter and Gordon, which was hilarious because we were completely the wrong band for that. You know, they had this.
How so?
Well, we were playing like Otis Redding and James Brown songs. We didn't know from this shit.
And they were pop, yeah.
Right, please lock me away. How does this go? What? You know? So it was a challenge for us, and I'm sure for them too. But I became friends with Peter at that point. Very bright, very sharp. We had the same taste in music and the same taste in movies and in literature. So we became pals.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went back. Peter and Gordon kind of broke up. Peter ended up going to work for Apple and being their head of whatever. After the Flying Machine, James ran back to North Carolina, and then he decided he was going to go to England. And just as a folkster, remember, in the Flying Machine, he was playing electric guitar. He could never hear himself. You know, and James doesn't he's not a screamer. So it was obvious that he was more comfortable accompanying himself with acoustic guitar on this low-key thing than it was trying to get over a two-guitar rock band. So he went to England. This has all been documented, Vicki, and I got him in touch with Peter Asher. I gave him Peter's address and phone number, and he went over there, and Peter got him a deal with Apple, and away we go.
And how did Russ and Lee come into the picture?
That was later. When we did, first when we did Sweet Baby James, I think it was Peter that discovered Russ. Russ was playing with Jon Stewart at the time, and he said, "This guy's great. Would you like to come in and do sessions?" And Russ turned out to be the perfect guy. But a lot of that is it's Russ being the brilliant musician that he is, and it's also Peter being the visionary, the guy who knows who the right people are. Then Leland came along. James went to see this man Wolfgang, a buddy of his, and he listened. He goes, "That bass player, it's the greatest bass player I ever heard." He came back and he told Peter Asher, "I've just heard a guy that's better than Paul McCartney." So Russ and Leland ended up on the next album, which was Mudslide Slim. Mm-hmm. And we all just went whoosh, like that.
Mm-hmm. And how did Carole come in as playing piano?
Well, Carole at that point had put out a couple of albums that had tanked, and then I'm not sure how it happened exactly, but Peter brought her in to play piano, or asked her to play piano on some of that stuff from Sweet Baby James. And we all knew who she was. We all loved her, and she was great, and she played the right kind of stuff, of course, and ended up being James's piano player. But James, as it's been well recorded, called her out at the Troubadour and said, "I must introduce you to the woman playing piano, that's Carole King. She's written some of the greatest songs ever. And he actually brought her into the limelight, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so did you know when you guys were making this music, did you know how great it was?
I knew it was great. I didn't know it was going to be, Time magazine cover, but I knew it was great. But I also knew that great stuff doesn't necessarily make it,
Mm-hmm.
So look at Laura Nyro. I mean,
I love Laura Nyro.
She tanked horribly,
Mm-hmm.
and so and there's many more examples than that.
Sure.
Of people that were brilliantly talented, but didn't get to that next place. So I knew that. Even as a young man, I knew that. Mm-hmm.
And so how does your life change when that happens?
How did my life change?
Yeah.
I started to make more money, started to have more fun, because now we're going on the road, and James is usually successful. James wasn't having much fun, but the rest of us were.
Why wasn't he having fun?
Because he was trying to deal with his fucking heroin addiction, and he was very insecure about it. James had at the time a weird relationship with the audience. He loved it. He loved being able to play his music and get back this wonderful response. But he also was never sure that it was the right, I guess, he was a conflicted person. James is a complex guy. Anyway, I don't want to go into all that, but anyway, now he's evolved into who he always should have been.
What's beautiful about going to see him now is that he still does that folk singer thing from the 60s where he tells the story of every song that he does, and it's such a beautiful thing.
Brings you in. He can play for 50,000 people, and he brings all of them right in.
Absolutely.
That's a great artist.
Yeah, it's a gift. It's wonderful. Okay, so life changes in that you're making more money, and now you go and you do Tapestry. Does Tapestry happen after this?
Well, it's around the same time. Tapestry happened around the same time as a Mudslide Slim, I believe. Yeah.
And so
I'm not quite sure about the chronology of
and so when you're working on this, do you have do you have an inkling that this is going to be like the most iconic album of its? Do you know? Can you tell?
No idea. I knew Carole was great.
Right.
I knew those songs were great. I knew Lou Adler as a producer was great. But I didn't know what Lou knew. He knew that this thing was perfect for the market, and that's his genius. He saw Tapestry as the love story, the movie The Love Story, as the album version of The Love Story, the movie.
Wow.
And he was right on the fucking money, Lou's very, very bright fellow, as we all know.
And also generous and wonderful. I was listening to you say earlier from another interview that Lou and Peter Asher were the two people responsible for putting names of the sidemen on the albums, that they started listing you guys, which kind of changed your futures, right?
Completely. Absolutely true, yes.
Because everybody of our generation knows your names, which of the Wrecking Crew, that was not really the case, right?
Their names were never on the albums. But remember now, the albums they were making were Nancy Sinatra, Dean Martin. Who gives a shit, That's the point, The Beach Boys, yes, but the Beach Boys would never put all these sidemen down on their albums. So now they're playing for this very middle of the road stuff, and they're doing it brilliantly. Lots of movie scores, But what not to take away from Miss Sinatra, who I have nothing against, but that would not be the first thing I'd want on my resume. I played on Nancy Sinatra's albums, I didn't give it back then. Especially, I had a really bad attitude, even worse than the one I have now. And I said, "Fuck this shit! Fuck this mediocrity!" Who gives a fuck? I want to play music that means something. I don't want to just go to 10 to 1, whatever. Give me the score. 1, 1, watch it. Oh, we're over. I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to do stuff that would mean something. And I knew the people I was involved with were on the same page. Carole, James, Lou, Jackson. I also knew Crosby and Nash. I knew all them fellers, back then. And they were serious. They weren't interested in 10 to 1, 2 to 5. They weren't interested in being slick. They were interested in telling the truth. and I loved that. What would you call it? I'm not sure what to call it, but I loved that the idea that they were shooting really high in terms of trying to create something that artistically and in society meant something.
Mm-hmm. Was there anybody that because you weren't, did you play with anybody that you did go, oh my God, I can't believe I played on that crap?
Yes, a lot of.
You did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When I was doing sessions in LA, after Lou and Peter had given us big names, we were all of us were being called to play sessions. Now Russ and Lee, they did fine. They're a rhythm section, and they did really well with me. You know, I have a definite style, a way of playing, and I also have a definite attitude. I'm not interested in being a studio sausage and playing mediocre music for people that don't give a shit, you know. And I realized I don't want to be if that's what being. I thought being a session musician was being like Steve Cropper, you know, Stax Volt, where you go in and you play with the greatest cats in the world, and you write the greatest songs with the greatest singers, and then you go home, and then you come back and do the same thing again next day. That's kind of what I was hoping for, or Motown, you know, or C Saint in New Orleans. Now I go to LA and it's all just bullshit. It's, you know, everyone is making an album and most of the people aren't good. They aren't any good. You're just doing it for the money. And I never felt that I was going to do something just for them. Maybe it's because I was a spoiled Jew boy that I felt that way. You know, that I was never interested in just doing it for the money. I wanted to work on stuff that was important. Jackson Browne, James Taylor, Carole King, David Crosby, Graham Nash, Neil, them.
So before them came Linda Rondstadt, I think.
No, that's after. That was later.
That was later. Okay, so Jackson wait, so what? So you're great friends with James. You have this long history with him. Why do you guys stop working together?
Oh, we had done 10 years together, and played on every album and on every tour. The last album I did with him was called Flag, and Flag was it was a great album. I still think that's a great fucking album. But a lot of it is rock and roll. Me and Waddy were both on that session, you can imagine, you know. Now, James realizes he's being pulled in this other direction. He's not sure he wants to be in this direction, but he also doesn't have the nerve to come to me and tell me, you know, listen, I knew I was going to be fired. Definitely. And I should have been fired because I wanted to play rock and roll. I wanted to turn that amp up and crank away, you know. I was tired of walking on eggshells. When you play with James, you walk on eggshells, you know, because of his because of him. And that's what you should do. And I'm not taking away from anything, you know. I learned a tremendous amount playing James's songs, which are very involved, lots of changes. You had to really be on your toes to play those songs. He was one of the greatest ever. He's you know, one of my absolute best friends in the whole world. But also...
Still?
Oh, definitely. So my point was that I wanted to play rock and roll. And it was wrong for me to try to push James in this area. That wasn't, even though James sings great rock and roll, let me tell you, he kills, but he doesn't have the kind of voice you can sing for an hour and a half, sing rock and roll for an hour and a half. He's got a tender voice, you know, and he works better with an acoustic guitar, quiet accompaniment. So I left, I quit, probably the day before I was going to be fired.
Did you leave at a different, were Russ and Leland still there?
Yes, they kept playing with James, yes. That's right.
So, and when you leave, are you and James on good terms? Is it okay?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, yes. I still loved him, he still loved me. And he knew why I left, and I knew that I was about to be fired, you know. And I didn't want to put him or Peter Asher through firing me, you know. They loved me. They knew, you know, I put them all together, and I was like completely pivotal in both their lives. And also, I knew I wanted to go in a different direction, so I thought it was up to me to make that move, you know. If I want to play rock and roll, go play it, but don't let these people hang. Don't let them hang, and don't make them fire you. You know.
Was it scary to leave?
I don't know, I didn't get too scared by anything back then.
So did you go right into the next thing?
No, I did not.
What happened when you left James?
What happened was I started running out of money. I was paying divorce bills. I was going to the market and checking out the price of cheese and then putting it back. The accountant that was supposed to be taking care of me fired me because I didn't have much going. And then I was going, oh shit, what's going to happen next? The phone rings. Peter Asher says, would you at all be interested in playing with Linda Rondstadt? Ha! I said, when do I start? And with Linda...
So you left on good terms with Peter also.
Oh, of course, absolutely. And still, you know, he and I, we're brothers, man. And we're family. James is family. You know, when you know somebody for 50 years, more, north of 50 years, they're family. So anyway, okay. You want me to tell you the story of my life? All right. So after that, I got this call. I learned Linda's set by listening to a cassette of her show. I went to the first rehearsal. And Linda, I knew Linda from before that. Great woman, very smart, super talented, badass, takes no shit from anybody type of individual. So I got up there. The first thing we rehearse is It's So Easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's so... Her voice coming through the side monitor was the loudest thing I ever heard in my life. I turned my amp up. I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. Come on. That's what I wanted to do, you know, was to play with somebody not defeated by stage volume, you know. And also I loved about Linda was that, well, she's one of the greatest singers that ever lived, without any doubt, because I played with everybody. There's no one any better than Linda, male or female. So then I had to learn her songs. Stop me if I'm droning on.
No. This is fantastic. For rock, this is fantastic.
So Linda was doing in her set, she would have a George Jones song, an Elvis Costello song, a Chuck Berry tune, a Jim Webb song, a George Jones song. They were from all over the place, and I loved that. I loved having, you know, doing all this wonderful material. That was all, you know, with James, it's just his songs, and you of course learn his DNA. I certainly did, about where he's likely to go and what he's likely to do in a song. But with Rondstadt, it was all this different shit. It was like, you know, starting all over again, and really great. I loved playing with her.
And so, how long did you play with Linda?
A couple of years. I think it was 2 tours and 2 albums, something like that.
And what brought that? And how did that end?
How did it end? No, I don't remember. She started doing opera, I think. You know, something else happened. Oh, I know how it ended. I got hired by Don Henley to be a record producer.
And you've produced. The list of people you've produced is absolutely. I mean, from Jon Bon Jovi to Toto to. I mean, you've produced huge albums. Was this something you always wanted to do as well? I
thought I'd be good at it, yeah. Because I had learned from the best. I'd learned from Peter Asher and Lou Adler about how you produce. And I thought I'd be terrific at it. And they thought I would be good at it too. So I went in that direction. Yeah.
And how was your temperament as a producer?
Terrible.
That's my curiosity.
All right. The thing is, I never would have been a successful. I actually was a very successful producer in terms of I got to work with big stars, but I never reached the holy grail of production, which is to break an act. To start with Counting Crows, nobody knows who the fuck they are, and then suddenly they sell 3 million records, and you're the producer. That is the holy grail of record production. And I never. Did you attempt to do that? I wanted to get those gigs, you know. But I always didn't get them, partly because of who I was associated with. By that time, once you do Henley and Bon Jovi and them, people put you in a bag. You're this kind of a guy, you know. And, I also started hating my artists. The stuff I was getting, these young bands, and you know, the stuff that Don didn't want to produce, you know. And I was getting his rejects and stuff like this, and the young bands coming in with all this attitude and the ego, and I started saying, in my mind, fuck you, you know? What do I have to fucking put up with this shit for, you know? Why don't you shut the fuck up, sit down and do what I tell you? But of course I never said that, you know? I would go, okay. Oh, what's it like when you're producing like what I assume is a big ego like a Jon Bon Jovi? I mean, there has to be ego there. There's tremendous ego there, but he knows what he wants and he's very good at what he does and he's not stupid enough to let his ego get in the way of excellence. You know, that's the point. If you're a professional, you know what's good. You know where to go. If you're young and stupid, all you have is your ego, you see.
And how about with a band like Toto?
Having someone to hate is a very wonderful thing for a young artist.
How about with a band like Toto, where there has to be, I'm going to interview Lukather and Porcaro soon, where there has to be a lot of egos going on. Is that difficult as a producer?
Well, it depends on who it is, really. You know, I'll accept an ego if it's coming from someplace, if it's coming from knowledge, if it's coming from excellence, of course, you know. If it's coming from some knucklehead that's just terrified, no, you know. And that's why I never made it as a producer. I would, you know, one of these young bands, I would have told the guys in Counting Crows, "You suck, all right? Hey, singer, the fuck is wrong with you? You make me want to puke." You know, so that would have endeared me.
Oh my God! But you didn't. But you did make it as a producer. I mean, you've produced.
I was able to be successful because I was hired by very successful people. Like Billy Joel trusted me and hired me to produce. Neil trusted me and hired me to co-produce a record with him. Henley, you know, I got to do 3 albums with him, and Henley
and co-write so much music with him as well.
I would defy any producer to go through 3 solo albums with Henley. Go ahead, babe. I'll hold your coat. You know. But I did. I loved him, and he loved me, and we made great music together. You know.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say
that you defy anybody to go through making 3 albums with him?
Don is not the easiest person to work with.
How so?
You know, he's got some Napoleon in him, but he also is a very sweet, loving man. And he kind of goes between the two. He's not sure which one to be. Because he's in business. He knows people are trying to rip him off. Because when you come from Linden, Texas, and your father runs a hardware store, and then you're in LA and you're making millions of dollars, you're cautious about people. You watch out for people. Oh, and you know this, Lisa, I'm sorry. You know this, okay, my dear Vicki, is that the not the stingiest, but the most alert people are the richest people. They're the most alert about, am I being ripped off? Does this person really like me? Or right? That's the province of wealthy people and famous people.
How did that collaboration start, you and Don?
Well, he was talking to everybody. He had to make a solo album. The Eagles had broken up. Glenn had made a solo album, which I played on, by the way. And Don realized he had to make a solo. So he started calling everyone in LA to come up to his pad and kind of jam with him and exchange ideas. And I'd heard about this, and I knew the phone was going to ring. I knew he was going to call me. He would have had to. He did. I went up there, played him a bunch of ideas. After about 3 hours, he said, "So, do you want to work on my solo album with me?" Yep. And that's how it started. He and I got along well. I loved him then, and I love him now.
And did you ever have this? Did you butt heads? Did you?
Oh, of course, all the time. You're kidding? I got fired 3 times. Absolutely. Yeah, I was constantly being fired. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you and Jackson, that collaboration, how did you meet?
Well, I met Jackson when he was really young, 19 or something. And
wow.
I was living on Ridpath Avenue up in Laurel Canyon with a guy named Barry Friedman. It was his pad, and I was his roommate. And Jackson used to come up there. He was like 18 or 19. And that's when I met him. And he'd pull out his guitar and sing a couple of tunes. I go, fuck.
He can sing.
This guy's really good. Then he had a gig. He had a little gig, solo gig down somewhere in Hollywood at this little joint that you had to walk down a flight of stairs to get to. Just him, solo, coffee house kind of situation. So we went down there, me and Barry Friedman and somebody else. And I went, wow. You listen to song after song by that guy, and it's just like, man, this guy's definitely got it. He's got something else going on, man. And he and I became pals, at a very young age, and he was a very, very young fella. And at this point right now, we are still very, very good friends and close, very close to each other. So.
And so how did the writing collab? I mean, Somebody's baby. Okay, so here's my question. So Ridgemont High, when I hear that song, I immediately think of Ridgemont High.
Yeah,
Now,
that's the idea.
so the song was written first. How did that? Tell me how that happens?
All right. Well, we were all friends with Cameron Crowe, and Cameron was asking everybody that he knew, and he knew everybody, to come up with some songs for the soundtrack to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I had this idea, Somebody's Baby, and I was playing on piano actually. So I had the chorus and those chord changes you hear. And I said, well, this could be really good, but I'm going to need Brown to make it what it ought to be. So I call him up and I go over there. This is the kind of stuff that used to happen back then. There was no big formal thing. You just go over to, Brown lived right around the corner from me off of Mulholland Drive.
So wait, you got the call to write the song from Cameron Crowe, and then
Well,
you
we
called
knew
him?
that, no, we all got the call to write.
You all got the call.
Well, we knew he was looking for material, and I had this chord changes and the idea, must be somebody's baby. I said, this is good, Now if I can pitch Jackson to do it. So I go over there and play him what I had. And he said, well, that's really good. I said, this is not for you. This is for Ridgemont High. It's got this teenage kind of vibe to it, And I said, as long as it's not, because Jackson wanted his songs to have at least social or social content. He didn't want to write anything as fluffy as Somebody's Baby. It's later. Now he realizes that that's a really, really good song.
It's a really good song.
His lyric on that is brilliant, and he plays it every night now.
So you guys pitch it to Cameron? Is that how that happens?
Pitching it to Cameron. We call Cameron and say, we have this song. This Jackson, well, we have the song for it. End of discussion. That's it. You want a song? We got a song. He didn't even ask to hear it. He knew that if it was coming from Jackson and me, it was going to be great, and he was going to need it. I don't think he realized how important it was going to be to the movie.
It's everything.
I have a signed poster somewhere from Cameron saying, thank you so much for helping this movie break through.
It is the movie. I mean, there's no way to think of that movie and not think of that song. It's just...
Well, I'll take it.
It's spectacular. Okay, so...
A lot of legs, shall we say.
A lot of legs. But you've had a lot of songs with a lot of legs. So was that your first monster hit?
I think Dirty Laundry was my first monster.
Dirty Laundry was before Somebody's Baby?
I don't, the fact is I
don't know.
I don't actually remember. I think so, but I'm not sure.
God, Ridgemont High was like so long ago. Okay. Anyway, so these collaborations that turned out these monster hits. So you and Jackson, okay, so Running on Empty, this is a tour that is different than anything else. Because why is it different than anything else?
Well, it's different because Jackson had hired us the section to play this stuff. He wanted to play new material, and at first he was going to do new material and then blend it with old stuff. Not Jackson. Russell said, "Why don't you just make the whole album new material?" And that's what happened. We started playing all his songs, and some of those songs are fantastically good. And we went out and hit it, and we recorded it all. Jackson's one of those guys. Once he gets something in his head, you can't stop him. You can't stop him, And we all said, all right, Hefe, let's go. And we did. We learned the material in rehearsals. And I had to learn how to play with Jackson because I had to find a style. Because he's playing one thing, Lindley is doing what he does, which is awesome. So I had to find a way in between them, and I did finally. And we went out and we hit it, Incredible experience.
And so what ended that? Why did you move on from Jackson? What happened then?
Everything moves on.
Everything moves on. And you're still great.
The way it is,
And you're still great friends. And is there any relationship that you left that there is hard feelings?
Some of my ex-wives, yeah.
Well, that's a whole different ball. But musically, is there anything that ended badly?
There's nothing I can remember. There's things that did end badly, but there's certainly no grudges or bad vibes that I feel. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Okay, I'm not the luckiest guy in the world. I'm the 34th luckiest guy in the world.
The 30, who was the 33rd? No, never mind.
I was hoping you could tell me.
Okay, so I think maybe you have become the luckiest guy in the world because now you play with your best friends.
That's right.
And well, not that you didn't play with your best friends when you were playing with James and
No, I
Jackson
did. You're
and all.
exactly right. I always was playing with my best friend.
You were always playing with your best friends, but now you get to play with these guys that you've been playing with. Other than Steve, you've been playing with. Wait, how did you and Waddy connect? What was the first thing you guys did together?
All right. So I'd been hearing about Waddy. He'd been hearing about me. And then Lou, in his infinite wisdom, he was producing an album by Tim Curry.
Oh, God, the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Tim's a great guy and a really good singer, too. So he hired, I think it was Russ and Lee as the rhythm section. I can't remember, but I think it was either one of them or both of them. And he hired me and Waddy. I'd never seen Waddy before. So I'm there. Waddy walks in. I take one look at him, and I say, "I love this guy. How could you not look at him? Look at this fucking guy. You know, he's a muppet. How could you not love this guy? You know."
Oh.
So I sat down, and we realized we both loved reggae. We bonded over reggae. I'm talking like in a minute, you know, of him sitting down. We immediately got it.
And there's never, not even from the beginning, not a moment of like we're both guitar players. This is going to be like there's none of that there ever.
Oh, you're kidding. We're always yelling at each other. We have terrible fights, you know, but it's always about the music, you know. What do you mean, man? What do you mean you don't get it? You know, what's the matter with you? You know, stuff like that. But,
two Jewish guitar players on top of it. Yeah, of course.
You know, most people can't stand either. Both of us are from New York, so most people in LA run from us, you know.
So that collaboration.
It's not like we're going to pull knives. I'm never going to speak to you again. It's like we're fighting about an arrangement or about music or about a set list or something like that. But we don't mind yelling because we're both from New York. That's what you do. You yell, you know. But it scares Californians.
But as far as playing together, though, it seems like you guys do it seamlessly.
That's right. Yeah, we do. The reason for that is he plays very differently from me, but he understands what I do, and I understand what he does. In all the sessions, we did tons of sessions together and played a bunch of stuff. We've never had a very long conversation about what we're going to do. A long conversation would be, all right, you go high, I'll go low. That would be like a long conversation.
So it comes time that, okay, you tell the story of how the immediate family comes to be.
Well, I had a solo deal offered to me from a Japanese label.
And how long ago is this?
4 years ago. I guess about 4 years.
Wow, is that okay?
4 or 5 years ago. So, I don't know. I don't know from time, man.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago. Thank you. And Vivid Records from Japan had called my buddy Fred Mullen and said, would Danny Kortchmar be interested in making a solo album? Freddie calls me. I said, well, yeah. At first I was scared, you know. The first thing was, oh, shit, it's a solo album. And then I started thinking about it and went, all the tunes I've written for other people, there's that. Plus, I have a bunch of new tunes. And I started writing. Once I knew I was going to make an album, I wrote a couple of things right then. Then, when it comes to how it's going to be recorded, I called Russ and Lee, assuming that they would be gone, you know, because they're always gone. They're too big. They were both available, and they both said, yes, we'll do it. I said, listen, I don't have much to pay you. I paid them like a third of what these guys usually get. They said, we don't care. You pay us anything. It doesn't matter. We'll be there. All right. Now we're in business. Right. Russ and Lee, game over. Then we called Jim Cox, who was one of the greatest keyboard players like ever. You know, the guy's fucking believable. And he agreed to come do it for a less amount than he would get or deserves. So Waddy wasn't available. He was out with Stevie, but the last day of sessions. Oh, then I called Jackson. He gave me his studio for free. No studio time. Studio time is $2,200 a day. He didn't charge that or anything. Then Waddy came in right at the last day. He finally finished up with Stevie and added a tremendous amount. And at that point, we looked at each other and we said, well, this should be a band, you know? And everyone agreed. It was so obvious. In other words, it wasn't like,
Wait. How does Steve get into this mix? How does Postel get in there?
I knew Steve. Steve was my pal, and he's one of the reasons I moved out here to Marina Del Rey. And Steve is a very adaptable and adept musician and singer. And he helped me tremendously on that first album that I just mentioned to you in doing pre-production, because that's the only way we get through it. That means we start off, we record an acoustic guitar part and a vocal and a click track. Now we put that up. That means the whole band plays to the click track. And so we're not starting with that. We already have that to play to. And these boys, you know, they learn a song in 5 seconds, you know. So that's how it went. And that's why Steve became invaluable. After those tracking sessions, we had to go back to Steve's. All the overdubs, all the vocals were done at Steve's. And at that point, he had kind of integrated himself into the situation. You know, he's very talented. And
yes, I've been booking him for over 40 years.
He's got that high vocal. He can sing
like an angel.
And he can play stuff Waddy and I can't do, like classical guitar and stuff that Waddy and I don't do. He does stuff Waddy and I don't and can't do. So
yeah, it's a beautiful blend. So okay, so they come together to do this record with you, and it's such a great experience that. And how do you get the name? Where does the name come from?
The name came from me, but I realized, you know, when I said immediate family, I realized it's not that great of a name for a rock band, but it's true. That's what we really are. We are immediate family. And nobody said no. Waddy said, well, that's not a very good name for a rock band. I said, you're right, it ain't. But it's true. You know, is it as good as the Rolling Stones? No, it's not. But it is an accurate representation of who we are and what we are to each other.
So how does this work now? Because Lee and like Russ, they're off with Lyle, and Waddy's off with Stevie. And so how do you guys make this work?
Well, that's a good question, because it doesn't work. It's very arduous to make it work. You know, Russ and Lee had to go out this summer, and they went out this summer because Waddy has to go out with Stevie. Waddy's been Stevie's musical director for 25 years. She can't go out without him. Plus, that's his only source of income at this point. So once he took those gigs through the summer and into the fall, Russ and Lee, who didn't really want to play with Lyle Lovett, took the Lyle Lovett tour. You know, not that that's a shit tour. Every musician on that tour is great, and although I've never heard it, I'm not a big Lyle Lovett fan. I'm more interested in Sam and Dave than Lyle Lovett, but I'm sure it's a great show, and I'm sure that band is phenomenal. There's no question.
So okay, so the film gets made through COVID, through the pandemic. All of that is going on. Denny Tedesco somehow manages to put together one of the greatest rock and roll documentaries that I have ever seen. It's just brilliant. Wow. And you guys, and you come off smelling like a goddamn rose. I will tell you that right now.
I'm glad to hear that.
I was absolutely shocked. I mean, you are charming and smiling and having a wonderful time, and that is clear, and it's lovely. So somehow this manages to get made during the pandemic, and it manages to get finished, and now it's got a distribution deal. So, and it did all the festivals and did all of that. And it's going to come out when?
December.
So what's next for the immediate family? How are you guys going to come together again?
Good question. All right. So February, we have a bunch of gigs. When I say a bunch, I mean 5 or 6. One of them being the Rock and Roll Cruise, which I'm sure you've heard about, and you should probably be on.
I would love to.
And of course, Waddy can't make any of that.
Oh.
So, and we have a choice of canceling the whole tour, which is 2 dates in California, the cruise, and then 2 dates in Miami. And so now we have a choice between canceling that gig. And if we cancel that gig, our agency is going to lose faith in us. Everyone's going to lose faith in us, you know. So we were fortunate to get a sub, Elliot Easton. No.
I've known Elliot.
And Elliot, as you know, is a terrific guy, great guy. And
I had no idea about this.
Right. Well, this is now I'm telling you. We knew we had to have a sub to replace Waddy for these things, to convince the bookers that we were an entity. The alternative is cancel the whole thing. And so now trying to keep this thing alive, as you can see, is arduous. I at one point swore that we would never do anything if it wasn't the five of us. But at this point, if we cancel this, we're taking money out of the guy's pockets, out of my boys' pockets. We're telling our management and our agency that that we're not really that serious. We're sending out a bad message. And this is very difficult for me because I'm at an age now where I only want to do what the fuck I want to do. You dig? I don't do anything I don't want to do. I'm old. I'm in a bad mood. I want to be left the fuck alone.
Old and cranky.
That's me. But this is something that had to be done. Also, I love to play. It's everything else, and everyone will tell you that. It's not the part where you're on stage. It's a cliche to say it. It's getting there. It's setting up. It's all that. It's the transpo and the lodgings and all that are difficult.
So how long is Waddy out with Stevie? How long is that tour?
Good question. I believe he's through March and April.
So are you looking to have some stuff then?
Yes and no. I'm hoping so, yes, that we could do some stuff then. Unless Stevie starts to book more gigs at that time. And if she does, we're going to be in a really bad situation. Do I hold, am I angry at Waddy for this? Of course not. He's got to make a living. And he's been working with Stevie for 25 years.
Yeah.
It way predates this band. I don't blame them,
How do you do Werewolves of London without Waddy?
We don't.
You don't. You just don't.
No. If
Do you do a Cars song?
We'll do a couple of Cars songs. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes sense.
No.
That'll be fun.
It ain't what the thing is, and we got a movie coming out now in which Waddy is a big part of. We got an album coming out now, which Waddy was a big part of, and he's unavailable. So I'm not sure. And COVID also just kicked the shit out of us.
Yeah.
Us and a lot of other bands too. It's very difficult to keep it on the rails at this point financially. Just to tour anything is like a risk.
Yeah.
So.
So you got COVID during the pandemic.
Right,
Did you get it when you were touring?
I got COVID maybe a month or 3 weeks before we were supposed to go to New York to do some really important gigs. All right. Then I got over it. My doctor gave me Paxlovid or whatever that drug.
Paxlovid, yeah.
And it went away. So I go to New York. We do the first gig. It's okay. I go back to my hotel and I start getting sick right away. And so I grabbed the test kit, positive. Now I got to go down and tell the fellas, I'm testing positive for COVID. We have a gig that night and another gig the next day, an important gig at Iridium in New York with a bunch of people that were going to come, bookers and stuff were going to come. Had to cancel both of them, because I got this fucking, and it was just a head cold. I would have gone on, But the fact of me having COVID, first of all, the other guys in the band, Waddy can't get COVID because then he can't tour with Stevie.
Right.
Still can't get COVID because he's got other health issues.
Right. Oh God.
See what I mean?
And when did you get it the second time? Was that the first time or the second time?
That's what I just described to you was the second time. I was in New York, ready to go. We did the first gig. I went home and I got sick. I got basically a head cold, So I said, oh shit. Then I tested for the virus, tested positive, and had to go downstairs where everyone was having dinner and tell them. Bad.
And it's moved through the band. You're not the only one that's gotten it.
Everyone in the band has had it at one point or another, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now, moving forward, are there aspirations other than the immediate family, or is this your thing? No.
Well, I'm thinking more COVID would probably be great.
Well, just stand in line because there's a new variant and everyone I know is getting it. So.
All right. Well, the next play is to get through these dates in February with Elliot. Mm-hmm. And as you know, Elliot is a joy to be around. Lovely, lovely guy and a terrific player. So we'll do that. Then we go into March, April, and I'm really not sure what's happening there. And I don't think Waddy is either. Right now, he says there's no gigs booked with Stevie. So maybe they can book us some gigs then, around that time.
Are you writing?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I'm writing, but at this point, I'm not really writing for the band. I wrote a bunch of stuff for the band for an album that will come out when the movie comes out. We have an album that's sitting in the can and been sitting there for a year, more than a year. And it's really good.
I have some leaked tracks. Yes.
Then it's very good. But
very
am I
good.
inspired to write more songs for the band? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Not in this market and not in this reality. I'm tired of us busting our ass to make this stuff and getting no response at all. Because there's no niche for us. You see, we're not. Rock is now. Well, it's Foo Fighters and Foo Fighters like stuff. There's no room for us in modern rock radio. So where is there room for us? We have no way to. We got to figure out a way to get to our audience. If there is,
you gotta play live. You
gotta play live. And I'll tell you something. I'm 77 years old. There's only so much of this stuff I'm prepared to do. All right. I don't need the fucking money, and I certainly don't need 100 dates a year where I got to live in a bus. Nope. Been there, done it. And I'm not the only one in the band that feels that way. So I'm not sure where we're gonna go or how it's gonna work.
So what's your life like, Danny? What are your days like?
Well, I have a routine, that I do. I go to the gym. I go to physical therapy because I've had to have back surgery, so I'm doing that. I play the guitar a lot. I do vocal lessons a lot. I call my daughters a lot and other friends. That's it.
Life is simple.
Yeah, I go out to social events when they're there. When I was with my angel, Lisa, there was a lot more of that,
Do you go out to hear music?
No. I haven't been out to hear music in a long time. It would take a lot to get me out to go hear music.
Are you COVID fearful, weary? Are you careful?
I don't care at this point. I had COVID twice. Basically, it was like a head cold, basic cold. I was prepared to go and play, even though I was sick and I didn't like it, but I've been in that position before. But it was because I was tested positive. The other boys didn't want me on stage.
So no date set for Southern California?
Yeah, for Southern California, I'm not sure about that. Not immediately, no. Where do you play in Southern California? The Mint? Great. I love playing the Mint. I don't, There's no fucking place to play,
What about, oh God, I can't think of the name of those places. There's two of them. There's one on the, oh God, what are they called?
There's the Troubadour and the Roxy, and those are the only two joints in Hollywood that you'd want to play. Then everything
No,
else,
but the place that you guys played last, I can't think of what it's called. The something, not Bogies, the something club. Oh fuck, I can't think of what it's called.
last place
Anyway,
I played in LA was the Mint.
but how about the time before that? No, it's the time before that.
Oh, it's one of those places. There's a
No.
yeah, right. There's the
No.
Coach House and there's the Canyon Club.
The Canyon Club. That's what I was
There's like
thinking of.
4 of those. They're all owned by the same fella, and we played all of them twice.
Well, I hope there'll be a Southern California date. I hope it'll be the Greek Theater, actually, or the Hollywood Bowl, because that's what you guys deserve. And I hope that's in your future. But Danny, thank you so much for doing this. I've
Thank you.
thoroughly enjoyed the time. And I can't wait to see you guys play out live. Nobody rock and rolls like you guys rock and roll.
We'll be out there. We'll be out there for sure.
Well, and everybody get ready for the movie, The Immediate Family. It is not to be missed. It is spectacular.
Great.
Take good care, Danny.
All right, my dear.